I'm JP Tuesday.
And I'm Kiki Cannon. As lifelong Disney fans, the work of countless talented Disney creatives have shaped our lives.
Now, as the Disney catalog expands, we're taking a journey through film and television to discover if that spark that shaped us as children lives on in adulthood.
Does your favorite Disney media still cast that same spell? Join us as we find out. We are Rewatching the Magic.
In the 21st century, evil mutants led by Magneto aim to destroy the world. Humans can do nothing against the power of the evil mutant. The only hope is the X-Men.
Go and save the city.
Kiki, welcome to Die!
I'm not sure I'm liking the sound of that.
I am Tuesday, master of magnets, X-Chicken. Oh, I love that arcade game so much. It is such a classic. Why is it not on the freaking Marvel vs. Capcom collection? Because it's a Konami game, of course. But I still want it on that. Yes, we are doing the X-Men animated series pilot, Pryde of the X-Men. Now, this was back in 1989, I believe it was. Let me.
Yep.
So, the fact that the pilot was done in 89 and the series would not get picked up until 92, that is very interesting, and how long it was between pilot and show, and how different the pilot looks to the show. Completely different voice actors, completely different team. But this is not the first attempt at animated X-Men, because I wanted to take this opportunity, now that we're talking about Pryde of the X-Men, to kind of do a bit of a history lesson of animated X-Men. So, Kiki, before we go into all of that, what was your experience? Have you ever even seen Pryde of the X-Men when it originally aired in 89, or was it one of those things you found later on?
Well, I didn't watch it originally, but I did have, later on, I did have the VHS tape that they released.
As did I.
Yeah.
So that was my experience of it, and of course, after seeing that, and then a few years later going down to the arcade and seeing these versions of the characters in the video game, yeah. It's amazing how that one pilot made one of the best arcade games ever, and it was just a one-off pilot. But to really get into where we are, how we got to Pryde of the X-Men, and then eventually X-Men the animated series and everything that came afterwards, we do have to turn the clock back to 1966 to a show called The Marvel Superheroes. This was the first real attempt to bring the Marvel superhero characters to television. And it was divided up into segments. Each episode would feature a different character with its own individual theme song. So you would get the Marvel Superheroes theme song.
The Marvel superheroes have arrived.
And then it would go into the theme song of whatever hero was being focused on that particular episode. So you would have Captain America, Iron Man, Thor, Hulk, and Submariner, each with their own individual themes. And we've kind of mentioned this before, how some of those early 60s themes ended up in the MCU, how you would hear a nice jazzy sound version of the Iron Man theme from from the Marvel superhero show, or you would get a little bit of Captain America throws his mighty shield, a little bit melody in the Captain America movie, or something like that. But have you ever actually watched the show? There's not a lot of episodes publicly available, and I am all for the preservation of media in any way possible, but sitting down and watching the first animated, if you can even call it that, the first animated appearance of the X-Men was in a Submariner episode called Dr. Doomsday. And again, Tiki, you saw this with me. Can you even call this animation?
It's so fascinating because I thought, like, it felt like a school project almost, you know?
Yeah.
A lot of it was just kind of mostly still frames, and then they would move the camera around to give the illusion of movement.
I feel like these were just pictures from the comic.
Some of them felt like that. A lot of it would be a completely static shot, and the only thing that would be animated would be the mouth.
Yeah, I'm going to make a really deep cut reference that no one's going to get. Very Clutch Cargo. For those of you who don't know that reference, Clutch Cargo was a cartoon in the 50s where they, very similar, little to no animation, and most of the story will be static images of a character with a real-life actor's mouth superimposed onto the drawing, and it looks really freaky. I'm just glad they did not do that for this and actually animated the mouths.
Yeah, but a lot of it would be a completely static shot, and then only one element of the image would be animated.
Yeah.
Like there's one part where it's supposed to be like some kind of military truck driving down the road, and everything is static except for the wheels on the truck, which are spinning. And that was the only part they bothered to animate. And then they have that thing that they do in a lot of cheap animation where they just moved the background side to side to give it the illusion of movement.
Apparently this actually was based off an actual comic, but it was based off a Fantastic Four comic. But apparently, due to various licensing issues, they didn't have the rights to the Fantastic Four, even though Doctor Doom is in this episode. So they substitute the Fantastic Four with the X-Men. Excuse me, the Allies for Peace. Like, they're not referred to as the X-Men in this story. They're referred to as mutants. They are referred to as by their mutant code names, but they're called the Allies for Peace. And they're dedicating their new headquarters, which just happens to be the Baxter Building. And if you didn't realize this was supposed to be the Fantastic Four, about midway through the episode, they're doing searches through the security cameras, and you just see the Fantastic Four logo.
Yeah.
Like, it's very obvious that this was supposed to be the Fantastic Four. But it's just weird how this is the first appearance of the X-Men and what poses they chose for these characters. Like, Professor X is, like, hunched over in his wheelchair trying to talk. Like, he's clearly in an action pose of some kind, but he's not moving. He's holding his wheels as if he's trying to move them. But he's talking very calmly. It's ridiculous. And the way they animate, like Iceman running, it's just hilarious. It's a nice bit of history, but it's so bad. Like, again, I'm all for the preservation of media in any way possible, and I am so thankful for the people who have uploaded these to YouTube and Internet Archive and all of the other places. But I can understand why Disney does not want to have this on their service. This is not a great representation of Marvel in animation in any capacity.
Yeah. A lot of times when you're preserving media, it's not that you're preserving media because it's necessarily good. You're preserving media because it's historic.
Yeah.
So that's the important thing. I'm glad that we have this,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not exactly good.
It's worth it for the novelty of this is the first appearance of the X-Men and the first appearance of X-Men in animation. But yeah, I'm not going to sit down and watch every one of these episodes of the Marvel superhero show. Just no. But if you are interested in it, it's just search Submariner Doctor Doomsday on YouTube and you'll probably find the cartoon. And you can decide for yourself what that historic first appearance of X-Men in animation, again, if you can call what that is animation, 2-frame animation.
Yeah.
Like I've seen YouTube videos that are better, YouTube fan animations that are better than that. But again, this was before such programs were easily available to regular people. But it's interesting to go back and see what that original story was about. It would be a while, but we would get another shot of X-Men would get their next appearance in animation, and I specifically talk about the X-Men, not their villains. Like in the 70s, there was a Fantastic Four cartoon. It's the infamous cartoon where the Fantastic Four beat Magneto with a wooden gun. That's all I need to say. Even if you've never seen the episode, you know what I'm talking about. So, but as the X-Men themselves, the actual team of the X-Men would not be animated again until 1981. So we go from 66 to 81 with Spider-Man and his amazing friends, Iceman and Firestar. This was the Spider-Man show I grew up with. I don't know if you grew up with this one or not.
I did not.
I was watching reruns of this as a kid. Because, again, this came out in 81. I was born in 81, so I would not see this until reruns much later. But this was my Spider-Man as a child. So there was the attempts of... for those of you who don't know about Spider-Man and his amazing friends, this was the 80s Spider-Man cartoon. Well, there were two 80s Spider-Man cartoons. One was just called Spider-Man, and one was Spider-Man and his amazing friends. Yeah, it's that weird thing, like in the 90s where we had two Sonic the Hedgehog cartoons. Same principle. They just wanted to have more of that character shown on television. But Amazing Friends features, again, Spider-Man and his new teammates, former X-Man, Iceman, and a brand new character created for this show, Firestar, as a team of superheroes going to college by day and being superheroes by night. And it really isn't that deep. It's a Saturday morning cartoon for kids, so don't expect what would come later. We are going to be talking about the X-Men themselves, as pertaining to the X-Men themselves. They appear in a few of the episodes. The ones we're going to talk about today are A Firestar is Born and the X-Men Adventure. Now, while Firestar is an original character just for this series, they did make up a backstory for her that she is a member of the X-Men. She is a mutant. Her mutant power is fire. Which makes sense because you have fire and ice. Apparently, the original plan was to have the Human Torch be the third member of the team, but due to, again, licensing with a potential Human Torch movie that never happened, they could not use the Human Torch, hence they created Firestar for this cartoon. Before we really get into the episode proper, I want to ask you, Kiki, what is your, since you didn't grow up with this show and this was kind of a first look for you, what would be your first impressions on the character of Firestar?
I wasn't really very impressed. It just seemed like kind of an amalgamation of various other characters.
Mm-hmm. It goes into that really bad. I mean, it's something that you've mentioned before, how there's always the girl on the team, and Firestar, despite her being a superhero with superpowers and a backstory, she mostly is just the girl of the team. And depending on who's writing the episode, she is either Bobby's girlfriend or Peter's girlfriend. Yeah, there's no MJ in this series. So maybe they have a throuple situation going on. I don't know. I'm not going to question the 80s kid show.
Yeah, I got that vibe from watching it, and it kind of annoyed me.
So the point of Firestar is Born, the first episode of this, is that there's an X-Men reunion, and Bobby and Jessica Firestar are going to go to this X-Men reunion while the city is being under attack by Juggernaut. And comically accurate Juggernaut. In the movies, if your only experience to Juggernaut is the movies, the X-Men movies did make Juggernaut a mutant. In the comics and in this cartoon and a few other cartoons, he is not a mutant. He is powered by a mystical crystal that gives him powers. And it is Juggernaut originally had the helmet that protected him from Xavier's mental powers, not Magneto. Magneto's thing would not that would not be a thing for Magneto until the movies. And they keep the connection of Juggernaut and Xavier being brothers, stepbrothers. And again, this is before all of that, so I did like that they did acknowledge that. But some of it is kind of very much we are explaining this to the audience because they're children, where Juggernaut just says his origin for no reason to Spider-Man. And again, it makes no sense for him to do that, but this is still a 20-minute episode, and we need to 20-minute Saturday morning episode for children, so we need to give these characters, so we need to give the kids all of the information that they need. And Spider-Man just gets owned by Juggernaut. He is just no match for Juggernaut, which, depending on how you want to go about how you view Spider-Man's powers, it is amazing. No pun intended, that just Juggernaut can just body Spider-Man like he's nothing.
Yeah, and I mean, we've talked about it before with Spider-Man, that, he always pulls his punches.
Yeah.
So I would have kind of liked to have seen Spider-Man and Juggernaut go at it.
Yeah, but that wasn't the point of the episode. It's not
I
his
know,
episode.
but
it's Jessica's episode.
Dream.
And in this episode, as part of this reunion, we get the introduction of the first appearance of, I guess you could call them the Giant Size X-Men characters, since Giant Size X-Men #1 had come out around this time. So we get an entire new team of X-Men. That's where the X-Men popularity really starts. We get the first appearance of Storm. Bobby, your girlfriend, is right next to you, and you are ogling Storm. And the fact, I don't know if it was intended or not, but Jessica just snapping her neck right at Bobby when he goes, "Oh, wow. I mean, hello."
That should have tipped off some people.
I mean, we were just talking about that last week with Days of Future Past.
Yeah.
And we get the first animated appearance of Wolverine. Yeah, this is where we get our first appearance of the Australian Wolverine. Yes, make your joke. They gave Wolverine an Australian accent, and then he was most popularly played by an Australian man. Yes, the joke is old.
Yeah, but the thing is that in this, Wolverine and Pyro are both Australian, and why?
I don't know.
I mean, it makes no sense. At no point in the comics is that in either of their backgrounds.
I think they just wanted to give them distinct voices for the cartoon. I don't know. And I don't think Marvel even cared. It's like, as long as they're making money, they're not going to care. Sell some toys. But the main story of this is Angelica's story, how she got her powers and how she was bullied in high school and how she came into her powers and she didn't know how to control them at first, so they call her a jinx because bad things happen. This Bonnie girl, I cannot say the word I want to say on a family-friendly podcast, but this girl has just, what is wrong with her? And it really comes down to, I'm rich, you're poor. Bonnie, who is Jessica's bully, she's a rich girl, Jessica's poor, I don't like you. And that's it for the entirety of their school days. Even when she doesn't rat them out for things that they've done, like they throw her homework away, and she doesn't rat them out. And, oh yeah, Jessica's pretty cool. We're not gonna. Maybe we shouldn't bully her anymore. No, I'm gonna bully her forever. I'm pretty sure Bonnie peaked in high school.
The thing is that bullies are kind of just like that a lot of times.
Yeah.
But also, it starts out kind of like you say, but then, her dollhouse melts around this girl and, weird stuff starts happening. So you can almost feel for the bully a little bit later on. But when she first starts picking on Firestar, you're like, why are you picking on this chick? She hasn't really done anything to you.
It really is the classism of I'm rich, you're poor, you are beneath me. Even going as far as to having her boyfriend ask out Jessica so she can frame her for stealing the championship cup. But yeah, she becomes Firestar for the first time. She solves the mystery, and then she is recruited by the X-Men. The one thing is that it is the proper pronunciation of the word, but it is always weird hearing this character referred to as Magneto.
Yeah, I don't like it, and I refuse to do it.
It is the proper pronunciation of the word. I understand this, but the character is called Magneto, not Magneto. And again, it's a Saturday morning cartoon for kids, and Marvel was just counting how many toys can we sell of this show, not really if this is accurate or not. And of course, the Juggernaut ends up at the X-Mansion. Spider-Man and the X-Men team up to defeat Juggernaut. Yay! So there's not much to talk about in the episode because it's just 20-minute quickie stuff.
Yeah.
So from that, let's say little Kiki is watching this cartoon in 1980 whatever, and this is the first time you're ever seeing the X-Men, is this wowing you and saying, hey, I have to go to the grocery store and pick up the latest X-Men comic? Yes, kids, back in the day, you could buy comic books at the grocery store. They were at the counter with all the magazines.
It's always hard to know what would have appealed to you as a kid, when you're looking back on it. I might have just watched because it was on, and it might have grown on me.
Mm-hmm.
But looking back, I don't think I would have been very into it,
Mm-hmm. So let's move on to the next episode of Amazing Friends that features the X-Men, the generically titled X-Men Adventure. Spider-Man and his amazing friends are once again with the X-Men. Another rotation and new team. Colossus, Nightcrawler, now part of the team, and Sprite, Kitty Pryde. I don't know what instructions they were given to color Kitty Pryde, because her legs and her arms are supposed to be in that blue, because that was her costume at the time, and they color it flesh color, so she looks like she's just wearing a yellow bathing suit with a belt on it.
I kept getting confused over whether or not this was supposed to be Kitty Pryde until she started phasing through walls.
Well, Sprite was one of her code names at the time, but they never referred to her as Kitty. They just always call her Sprite.
Yeah, and that confused me because I personally don't associate that name with her.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't until she started phasing through walls that I'm like, I guess that's supposed to be Kitty.
Mm-hmm.
But
we also have Thunderbird in this episode as well. I believe this also is his first animated appearance. He doesn't do much himself other than turn into a bear. But yeah, this is another Firestar episode. We find out that one of Firestar's old boyfriends, who used to be a scientist, is now taking revenge on Firestar because he believes that she caused a lab accident for him and half of his body is destroyed, making him a cyborg named Cyberiad. Cyberiad is a character exclusive to this episode. He does not appear in any Marvel comic, but it's very much Deathlock inspired. It's not that interesting of a character other than the Jekyll and Hyde two personalities thing they try to do with, no, I don't want to hurt Firestar. I love her. Programming says destroy Firestar.
this one was a weird one to me. We've got that background with like, oh, someone here has a background with this character, And then it's like, let me go through all of your minds so that I can find out who knows this character.
I'm not going to go through your mind, Spider-Man, because I made a promise to not search for your secret identity.
Well, he does go through Spider-Man's brain, but like, he's like, don't worry, I won't look for your secret identity. And Spider-Man's like, you're a good egg, Professor. It's like... But the thing...
I have seen that gif of Spider-Man putting up the OK sign. I never knew it was from this episode.
Yeah, that's true. I have seen that as well. But like... So the professor, who has like a really wrong voice for the professor in this episode, like I don't like the voice they've given him. But anyway, but like he goes through and he's like, oh, it's Firestar. She's got the the background with this guy, but she's blocked it out or whatever.
She may have killed this guy, may have not have. But the dude is very much, I will kill Firestar. No, I love Firestar. I can't kill him. Programming says kill Firestar.
Yeah, but the whole thing is like Firestar and this dude had like a, summer lovin', like that whole thing.
Yeah.
And then like he gets turned into a half cyborg and now it's like, I love her, I hate her, I love her, I hate her. Which, to be honest, in the episode doesn't really make that much sense. They kind of gloss over it very quickly.
Again, it's very 80s Saturday morning cartoon. The writing isn't going to be that deep. I know it's a terrible excuse, but that is what it was back then. So yeah, and the random for no reason real names being thrown down. Like the Colossus that turned against you, Kitty, was a hologram. I knew Peter Rasputin wouldn't turn on me. Okay, we're just gonna say their real name for no reason, Kitty.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, again, the episode is nothing to run home about. It's just, how many boyfriends does Jessica have? I'm not shaming her, but it's the what we just talked about with when you're the girl in the 80s and 90s kind of shows like this, where you're just everyone's girlfriend. And the writing is inconsistent between every episode because there's no, these episodes were meant not to air in any kind of order, and you could watch them in any order, and each episode is designed to be somebody's first episode. So continuity did not exist in Saturday morning cartoons back then. So you could do whatever you want, but the downside of that is the female characters kind of get undercut, and that really does hurt Firestar, especially when the episodes we've talked about are her episodes.
Yeah, I will agree with that.
So that was that with Amazing Friends. Again, I grew up on Amazing Friends. Is this a show that I'm going to say it's the greatest ever? No, definitely not. But it does have a soft spot in my heart because it was the one I grew up on before the 90s cartoon. And the 90s cartoon was so much better than what this was. But now we get to what we're actually here for. The actual pilot, Pryde of the X-Men. And the one that we watched was a full-on VHS they uploaded the entire VHS of whatever this was on. So you get all of the ads that were on it beforehand, including the ads for the Spider-Man video games at the time. And they're clearly using clips from the 80s and the 80s Spider-Man cartoons, both Amazing Friends and Spider-Man. Some even from the 60s. I think that one with when they show the lizard is from the 60s cartoon. Oh, but to play these games back in the day. I don't know if you had any of these games back in the day.
I did not.
I had the X-Men video game. I don't think I ever had the Spider-Man. My Spider-Man game wouldn't be until like Spider-Man versus the Kingpin back in the old Sega Genesis. Oh, those were the days. But the one you and I were talking about off mic before we got on here is the PSA of Spider-Man encouraging people to register to vote. But the fact that whoever they have here in the Spider-Man costume doing, I don't know if the person in the Spider-Man costume is voicing Spider-Man, but he's doing all the motions. It's fine. It's a nice little PSA, 80s PSA. My thing was that the fact that he signs his voter registration with the name Spider-Man, I don't know if that's going to hold up, Spidey.
Yeah, that might not get you on the voter registration.
Enough stalling. Let's get to Pryde of the X-Men. Let's talk about this intro and this theme song. Obviously, the intro is just clips from the episode, but what's your thought on this X-Men theme song?
It's not horrible. It doesn't go as hard as the X-Men theme we're all aware of.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not bad.
And we get Stan Lee doing the narration for this episode. And wow, the way he goes hard on this narration.
This is the thing I always remember about this episode. It is because it is Stan Lee trying to make you terrified of mutants, which is not what I think of when I think of X-Men.
Could your family member be a mutant? Could your neighbor be a mutant? Watch out for the mutant menace. Not like the good mutants that are the X-Men, but the terrorist mutants like Magneto and the Brotherhood.
But, like, even when he's like, some of them use their powers for good, like the X-Men, it's like, well, yeah, but you just scared the crap out of me that anybody I know could be a mutant, so I'm already terrified before you're like, but some of them are good, and I'm like, well, Stan sounds more like he's the head of the, Friends of Humanity in this, rather than, like, Stan Lee who wants you to feel for the X-Men, you know?
Yeah. The beginning starts with the Brotherhood breaking Magneto out of some sort of prison, and he's going to do some evil plans. The main crux of this, the main plot here starts with the introduction of Kitty Pryde joining the X-Men. And I've said this before, it's a good way to introduce the characters. You need an audience surrogate character. It does it here with Kitty. It did it in the 90s cartoon with Jubilee, and it did it with the Fox movies with Rogue in that first one. It's a proven formula. It works. But I want to ask you, Kiki, how does this introduction of Kitty to the X-Men team go over for you with this astral projection Professor Xavier?
I mean, it works all right. The weird thing to me watching it back was I had forgotten how much Professor X just kind of spins around in his chair.
Yeah, no, the hover chair didn't exist yet, so we just have this little motorized wheelchair, and he just spins around. I mean, if you had a motorized wheelchair, wouldn't you want to spin around on it?
I mean, maybe a little bit, but he's just constantly doing donuts in it.
Mm-hmm. He should start popping wheelies on it. But we do get this versions of the X-Men team. We get Cyclops, we get Storm, we get Wolverine, Colossus, Nightcrawler, and Dazzler. They don't really go in much into any of these characters' backstory. Had this gone to a series, we probably would have gone into their respective backstories, especially, you know, Dazzler's backstory of being a singer before joining the X-Men. I don't know. I feel like maybe Dazzler would have been a better introduction character than Kitty in this scenario. I know Kitty's the kid, so that would make sense, especially when you're trying to sell this to children.
Yeah.
But considering the era this was coming out, we're in the era of glam rock. You know, a certain TV show called Gem and the Holograms was on TV, so why not play off that? Of having a gem-like character in Dazzler joining the X-Men, I don't know. But I get that, you know, Kitty's the kid and they want her to be the kid character, the kid surrogate, so the kids who are watching the show can put themselves through her and whatnot. I get that. The running kind of point in this one, I guess, would be Kitty being deathly afraid of Nightcrawler. Like, she wants nothing to do with Nightcrawler. She's just, in some ways, he's kind of pushing the friendliness, hello, mon cher, and all that stuff. But on one hand, I think Nightcrawler is kind of being a little bit too much in being friendly to Kitty, but Kitty is also overreacting to looking at this blue elf man. And that kind of goes through the entire episode of her being deathly afraid of him and kind of wishing he would go away, and the culmination of that being his almost death.
The thing about this episode to me is that I kind of like what they were trying to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
I do like the intro of Kitty Pryde.
Mm-hmm.
And how they try to integrate her into the X-Men. I like how kind of scared she is, because, they have her get this kind of like postcard from Xavier, and it knows a little too much about her, because Xavier has read her mind,
Mm-hmm.
And she shows up with this postcard, and she's like, how do you know all this stuff about me? I've never told anybody this, including that she's got powers, And Xavier's like, hey, don't worry about it. We've all got powers here and everything. Come look at the danger room. And then Nightcrawler scares her, and she phases through the danger room controls and, all that kind of stuff, It kind of screws up the danger room, and they have to save her, and, it's a really cool setup, It's just, you kind of wonder, like, come on, Xavier, you've already got a team set up, because there's already an X-Men team.
Mm-hmm.
That he's been training, and he gets Kitty to show up, and you would think he would have a better way of recruitment without, like, terrifying teenagers. Is it just me, or is that, like, a weird part of the story?
Yeah. Considering that this is a pilot, they wanted to get Kitty to the mansion as quickly as possible. I don't know how you do that and keep the episode flowing, because this is just a 24-minute episode. So you need to get Kitty to the mansion as quickly as possible, and the fastest way would be, here's a letter we sent you, come to the mansion.
Well, yeah, but I mean, like, you can send it to her parents or whatever, and be like, wow, you got a full scholarship to some special school because you're really smart or whatever, and then she gets there and it's full of mutants,
Mm-hmm.
But it just seems so weird to me the way that, like, they kind of do that, and Xavier just has no backup plan for, like, what if this child freaks out being here,
And she does, and it just screws up the security system. Here comes Juggernaut and Magneto. And they're there for the core of Cerebro so they can use it for their evil plan, which apparently is to redirect a comet to destroy the Earth so all of the humans can die and mutants can take over the world. Kind of an extreme, Eric. Kind of an extreme. I understand that you want to, again, this is back when Magneto was mustache twirling villain. I get that. But redirecting a comet to crash into Earth to kill the humans so mutants can take over the world is a bit extreme, even for you, Eric.
Yeah, also, that would kill the vast majority of the mutants, too.
Yeah.
Because most mutants aren't like Colossus or whatever. They're not invulnerable.
Yeah. So I don't think Magneto thought this through. But then again, he is an insane villain. And again, this is back when he was insane villain.
Yeah. I prefer the much more nuanced Magneto.
Mm-hmm. And then they kidnap a family that is of a scientist working on scouting this comet. And the X-Men save him because we get our Australian voice Pyro and nothing moves the blob. But they beat him, and we get that moment where thank you X-Men, you have saved us. Now get away from us, you dirty mutants.
Yeah, I really didn't like that part.
But it is in character to how the X-Men are treated in their world. Bigotry makes no sense. That's kind of the point of the X-Men. We have Kitty in this, so how they introduce her partner, Lockheed, is very weird. Because they're going to that right away in this pilot. And Lockheed is just this dragon that just happens to be on Asteroid M with the Brotherhood. No explanation why he's there. He's just there because we need to get Lockheed and Kitty together because they're a team. What did you think of how they introduced Lockheed in this pilot?
Honestly, I didn't think much of it because I was like, why is that how they fit him in there,
Mm-hmm.
It's just like you go up to Asteroid M and Lockheed is just there with Toad, who is Peter Lorre.
Why you give him the Peter Lorre voice, Frank Welker?
Yeah, I mean, no offense to Frank Welker. He is your childhood. But Toad is just there hanging out with the voice of Peter Lorre, and Lockheed is just hanging out. And every time Lockheed goes over to Magneto, Magneto just like backhands the poor little dragon, So it's like, why is he there? Why is he hanging out with Toad? Was he just living on the asteroid and they found him and were like, yeah, I guess he can stay, but like Magneto is just like anti-dragon? I don't know.
I don't know.
So,
if only they knew what powers little Lockheed had inside him.
Yeah, I mean, pretty useful little dragon there.
Mm-hmm.
But, so he's just there hanging out, and then when Kitty shows up, she's nicer to him, and Lockheed's like, okay, you. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a boring way to introduce such a cool little character, but okay.
I mean, I get it. They want to get this lineup the way they want it, and maybe they had plans for Lockheed, and if this had been going to a series. I mean, I could see them. They're thinking Lockheed plushies. On that, why did they not sell Lockheed plushies?
Yeah, I mean, I'd be all for that.
One that you can kind of with a bendy wire that you could put on your shoulder.
Yeah, or magnets.
Oh yeah, like the ones they have at Disney with the little magnet butts.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the X-Men go off into space with the is this the Blackbird? Is this the X-Jet?
They call it the Blackbird at one point.
But they also refer to the mansion as the X-Mansion.
Yeah, but they specifically refer to the plane as the Blackbird towards the end there when Professor X says, I'll keep the Blackbird in your sight.
Mm. So yeah, they're going up into space to stop Magneto from changing the direction of the comet. They fail because we need a cliffhanger to get into the commercial break. But Nightcrawler can reverse the situation because he can teleport into the room where the cerebral core is and change the the comics direction back to normal, but he'll have to sacrifice himself to do it. Magneto runs away. Hey, yes, you may have stopped my plans now, but Nightcrawler will die. Welcome to die, Nightcrawler. So they try to make a plan. Okay, you can bamf out of the asteroid M onto the Blackbird as long as it's in your line of sight. They miss it by just a few, and he's end up in space, and he's going into Earth's atmosphere. Oh no, he burned up. He's dead. Or is he dead? Because he's able to bamf at the last second onto the Blackbird. Just as Kitty was crying for him, I treated him so badly. I wish I could apologize to him. He was the bravest of us all. Nightcrawler lives. He's there, yay. And now Nightcrawler and Kitty are friends, and they give each other the kiss on the cheek, yay. And when Wolverine, who's kind of the grumpy butt of the group, kind of finally accepts Kitty as a member of the X-Men. So let's kind of go into this. There's a reason this did not go to series. I don't know if this version of the X-Men would have worked, especially as we're going out of the 80s into the early 90s. Would this have worked as a series for you?
I mean, maybe, but I'm glad we got the series we ended up getting.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there were a lot of problems with this one that would have needed to be worked out.
They might have needed to redo probably half of this episode to make it a little bit more streamlined or more of a better written introduction for Kitty into the team or something. I don't know. Because this goes at the speed of lightning, and I get why. Because, again, this is a 20-minute commercial. We need to get this. We need to sell these characters to the audience. Go, go, go. Get us some action. And hit the ground running. I get it. I don't know if that was the best decision to go for this pilot. But without this pilot, we would not have the X-Men animated series that we would get a few years later.
Yeah, I mean, I'll agree with that.
So, Kiki, does Pryde of the X-Men have the magic?
I'm glad we got it because it let us get the good series later.
Mm-hmm.
But I think really the only thing kind of weirdly magical about this particular one is the really creepy Stan Lee opening.
Yeah.
Which is forever stuck in my head.
The only magical part of this for me, and if you've been listening to this episode, you already know, it's the fact that this led to the X-Men arcade game. I am thankful that this pilot exists, and they took it and they made one of the greatest arcade games ever made from it. That is the only magical part for me personally. So as itself, again, I'm grateful that this exists, that without this we would not have had the X-Men animated series that we would get a few years later. But I understand why this did not go to series. I don't think they really had a solid idea of what they wanted this to be. And I'm glad they had those few years to refine it and give us the X-Men animated series that we did get. So it's worth watching, again, just to kind of see what could have been in terms of X-Men animated series. But on its own, not that great. Not that great. So yeah, that's the best I can describe Pryde of the X-Men.
Yeah.
So let's move on to next week. We are stepping back into the Fox movies with probably the best one. Definitely the best of the Wolverine trilogy, Logan. Now, they said in Deadpool and Wolverine they are not going to retcon Logan. So let's go back and watch Logan and see how this happened and how this, if at all, connects to Deadpool and Wolverine. It's going to be so much fun going back to that movie. So come back next week for Logan, and we will talk to you all next time. Bye.
Bye.
Don't let the magic stop here. Join our conversations on Facebook, Instagram, and Threads at Rewatching the Magic. We are on the X, formerly known as Twitter, at Rewatch the Magic. And new episodes are available every week at rewatchingthemagic.podbean.com. Remember, the magic is for everyone. It only stops if you let it. Podcasts are fun,
but there's work to be done.
We encourage you to get involved. Here are some organizations we support.
The American Civil Liberties Union fights for the constitutional rights of all Americans. Find them at aclu.org.
The National Network of Abortion Funds helps people find access to safe abortion services. Their site is abortionfunds.org.
The Trevor Project provides a 24/7 crisis helpline for LGBTQ youth and education services for schools on LGBTQ issues. They can be found at thetrevorproject.org.
Or find a way to help in your area.